I was lying in bed at 2:47 a.m. when Jesus appeared in my room and told me that 4 specific rapture events would occur within the next 12 hours, and that most believers, even those who think they're ready, would miss 3 of them entirely. What he showed me about these events shattered everything I thought I understood about being prepared for his return. The 4th event, the one happening at midnight, is the only one most Christians are watching for. But Jesus wept when he showed me the 3 earlier opportunities that believers will sleep through because they've been taught to look in the wrong direction. Before we begin, tell me one thing you're praying for right now in the comments. I want to pray with you by name. And if you're a true believer in Christ, if you've genuinely repented, if you have saving faith, if you're truly following Jesus, please subscribe. What you're about to hear will challenge everything you've been taught about readiness. I need to know there are believers out there who are awake, watching, and ready. So, let me tell you how this started. I'd been on set all day, filming scenes for The Chosen, and honestly, I was exhausted. Playing Jesus for the cameras it's an incredible honor, but it's also spiritually draining in ways I can't fully explain. You spend hours trying to portray the character of Christ, trying to get the inflection right, the compassion in your eyes, the authority in your voice, and then you go home and you wonder, am I actually living what I'm portraying? It's a question that keeps me up at night sometimes. That particular evening, I'd finished a scene where Jesus is warning the disciples about staying watchful. Therefore, keep watch because you do not know the day or the hour. We must have done that scene 15 times, different angles, different lighting. And each time I spoke those words, I felt this weight in my chest, like the words were meant for me, not just for the disciples in the scene. I got home around 11 p.m., took a shower, and just collapsed into bed. My body was tired, but my mind wouldn't stop. I kept thinking about that verse about being watchful, and I found myself praying, just whispering into the darkness, Jesus, what does that even mean anymore? What are we supposed to be watching for? Another year? Another decade? How do we stay ready when we don't know if it's happening in our lifetime or centuries from now? I didn't expect an answer. I pray all the time, but it's usually it's me talking, working through my thoughts, hoping he's listening but not necessarily expecting some audible response. But at 2:47 a.m., I woke up suddenly, not gradually, not like you normally wake up. It was like someone had literally pulled me from sleep into complete alertness. My heart was pounding, and I could feel this presence in the room. The air felt different, thicker somehow, charged with something I couldn't name. And then I saw him. Jesus was standing at the foot of my bed, and I'm not talking about some ethereal, ghost-like vision. He was solid, real, more real than anything else in the room. He was wearing simple robes, and his face. Oh, his face. It held such sorrow, such profound grief. His eyes were filled with tears that hadn't fallen yet. I couldn't speak. I literally couldn't make my mouth work. I was trembling so hard the bed was shaking. You asked what you should be watching for, he said, and his voice was gentle but carried this weight of authority that made my bones ache. I'm going to show you, but what you're about to see will break your heart, because the church has taught my people to watch for the wrong things. I wanted to ask what he meant, but before I could form the words, my bedroom was suddenly gone. I was still in my bed. I could feel the mattress beneath me, the pillow under my head, but I was also standing in this vast space that seemed to exist outside of time. I was in both places at once, if that makes any sense. There are 4 rapture events that will occur in the next 12 hours, Jesus said, and now he was standing beside me in this vast space. 4 opportunities for my bride to be caught up to meet me. But the church has only taught believers to watch for one of them, the final one. And even then, they're watching the wrong way. He gestured, and suddenly I was seeing earth from above, watching time move forward rapidly. I could see a clock in the corner of my vision. It showed 3 a.m., then began ticking forward. The first rapture event, Jesus said, his voice heavy with grief, occurs at 6 a.m. Do you know what it is? I shook my head, confused. I don't understand. The rapture is one event, isn't it? When you return in the clouds, and the church has made it about clouds and trumpets and visible signs. He interrupted, and there was such sadness in his tone. But I told you the kingdom of heaven is within you. The rapture, the catching up, the meeting with me, it happens first in the hidden places. Before it ever manifests in the physical realm, it occurs in dimensions most believers have forgotten to watch. He turned to me, and his eyes were searching mine. Tell me when my spirit calls to your spirit in the early morning hours, when I'm drawing you to prayer, to my presence, to intimate communion with me. How often do believers hit the snooze button? The question hit me like a physical blow. I thought about all the mornings I'd felt that pull, that gentle invitation to get up and spend time with him, and how I'd rolled over and gone back to sleep, how I'd told myself I'd pray later, after I got more rest. At 6 a.m. tomorrow, Jesus continued, there will be a call that goes out across the earth. It won't be audible to natural ears, but every believer will feel it a drawing, an invitation, a deep pull to come away and meet with me. It's a rapture of spirit, a catching up into my presence in the secret place. Those who respond, who rise and enter that intimate communion, will be prepared for what comes next, but most will ignore it. They'll hit snooze. They'll tell themselves they're too tired. They'll promise to pray later. He showed me millions of bedrooms across the world, believers in every time zone, all feeling that same pull at their respective early morning hours, and I watched as the vast majority of them turned over and went back to sleep. They felt the invitation, some even recognized it as being from him, but they chose comfort over communion. I'm not just talking about prayer, Jesus said softly. I'm talking about the catching up of the Spirit into my presence. In those morning hours, I open doors into heavenly places. I offer encounters. I offer revelations. I offer the kind of intimacy that prepares a bride for her bridegroom. But you cannot have it while lying down. You cannot experience it while choosing sleep over seeking. I felt sick to my stomach. How many times had I done exactly that? How many divine appointments had I missed because I was tired? But that's just the first event, he said, and his voice became even more solemn. The second occurs at 12 p.m., noon, the middle of the day when everyone is busy, distracted, consumed with their daily tasks. The scene shifted, and now I was seeing offices, homes, cars, restaurants, people everywhere going about their routines, believers mixed in with unbelievers, all busy with the demands of life. At noon, Jesus said, there will be a moment, just a single moment, where I will pass by every believer. You won't see me with physical eyes, but your spirit will sense me. It will be like a whisper, a brush of wind, a sudden awareness that I am near. In that moment, I'm offering something precious, the choice to acknowledge me, to turn your attention to me, even in the midst of your busy day, to be caught up mentally and spiritually into awareness of my presence, even while your body continues its tasks. I watched as that moment came. It was subtle, so subtle. Believers would pause mid-keystroke, or feel a sudden quiet in their spirit during a conversation, or sense something that made them want to look up from their phone. It lasted maybe 3 seconds. That's all. Those who recognize me in that moment, Jesus explained, those who acknowledge my presence, even if it's just a silent "I see you," Jesus is in their heart. They will be caught up into an awareness of me that will sustain them through what's coming. But watch what most do. I watched in horror as the vast majority of believers completely missed it. The moment came and went, and they never even noticed. They were too focused on their emails, their to-do lists, their conversations, their worries. The presence of Christ passed right by them, and they didn't even lift their heads. This is what I meant when I said, watch, Jesus said, and now his voice carried an edge of grief that made my chest ache. I didn't just mean watch for visible signs in the sky. I meant watch for me. Stay alert to my presence. Keep your spiritual senses tuned to my voice, my movements, my nearness. The bride who is truly ready is the one who recognizes her bridegroom's footstep, even in a crowded room. I was crying now, tears streaming down my face, because I knew with terrible certainty that I would have missed that moment too. How many times had Jesus passed by me in the middle of my busy days and I'd been too distracted to notice? The third event, Jesus continued, and now the scene shifted to evening, occurs at 6 p.m., the time when most believers are transitioning from work to home, from productivity to rest. And this is perhaps the most crucial one, because it's a test of priorities. I saw families gathering for dinner, people heading to evening commitments, believers checking their phones and planning their evenings. And again, that same subtle presence, that same whisper in the spirit. At 6 p.m., Jesus said, I will issue an invitation. not to a formal prayer meeting or a church service. I'll be calling believers away from their evening plans, asking them to sacrifice what they had intended to do, the television shows, the social gatherings, the hobbies, the rest they feel they've earned, and instead spend that time with me. Those who answer that call, who choose me over their own comfort and preferences, they're demonstrating the kind of love that a bride has for her bridegroom. But what I saw next devastated me, because Jesus wasn't asking for the whole evening. He was asking for just 1 hour, 60 minutes, to set aside their plans and sit with him, worship him, let him minister to their weary hearts. And I watched as believer after believer said no, not out loud, of course. They didn't say, "No, Jesus, I won't spend time with you," but their actions said it. They felt the invitation, some even acknowledged it, but then they rationalized it away. "I'll do it later. I'm too tired right now. I need this time to decompress. I've already spent time with God this week." What made it worse was seeing the dilated grief on Jesus' face as each person chose something else over him. These weren't evil people. These were believers, people who genuinely loved him. But when the moment came to demonstrate that love through sacrifice of their own comfort, they chose themselves. "Do you see?" Jesus asked me, his voice barely above a whisper. "This is what I mean about being ready. The bride who is ready is the one who, when I call, drops everything and comes. Not the one who has all the right doctrine. Not the one who goes to church 3 times a week. Not the one who can quote scripture. But the one who truly loves me enough to sacrifice for me." I couldn't stop crying, because I was seeing myself in every single one of these people. How many evenings had Jesus invited me to something deeper, and I'd chosen Netflix instead? How many times had I felt that pull and ignored it because I was tired, because I'd had a long day, because I felt I deserved my own time? "These 3 events," Jesus said, turning to face me fully, "are all preparation for the 4th, because the 4th event, the one at midnight, that's the one that will manifest physically. That's the one the church has taught everyone to watch for. But here's what they don't understand. Only those who have been caught up in the first 3 will be ready to participate in the 4th. My mouth went dry. "What do you mean?" "The midnight event is when I will appear physically," he said. "When the trumpet will sound, when the dead in Christ will rise, when the transformation will occur. But that physical rapture is only for those whose spirits have already been raptured, those who have been responding to my calls, recognizing my presence, choosing me over their own comfort. The physical rapture is the culmination, not the beginning." He let that sink in for a moment, and I felt like my whole understanding of the end times was being turned upside down. The church has taught people that the rapture will happen to everyone who believes in me, regardless of the condition of their relationship with me, Jesus continued. "But I tell you the truth, the rapture is for my bride, and my bride is not someone who merely believes I exist. My bride is someone who knows me intimately, who responds to my voice, who watches for me, who chooses me above all else." These 3 events between now and midnight, they're not just random tests. They're invitations into the kind of intimacy that makes someone ready. I was trembling so hard I could barely stand. "But Jesus," I managed to say, "how will people know? How will they recognize these moments?" He smiled sadly. "That's the point. The ones who are truly mine will know. They'll recognize my presence because they've been cultivating intimacy with me all along. They'll feel my call because they've learned to tune their spirits to my voice. They won't miss these moments because they've made watching for me a way of life, not just something they do during prophetic seasons." The vision was starting to fade now, and I could feel myself being pulled back to my bedroom. But Jesus had one more thing to say. "Tell them," he said, his eyes locked on mine with an intensity that burned through me. "Tell them that tomorrow, today, for you now, these 4 events will occur. Tell them to watch. Tell them to be alert. Tell them that the rapture they've been waiting for won't happen to those who are sleeping through my invitations to intimacy. And tell them," he paused, and a tear finally fell down his cheek. "Tell them I'm grieving for how many will miss me tomorrow, simply because they've never learned to recognize when I'm near." And then I was back in my bed, gasping for air, my pillow soaked with tears. The clock on my nightstand read 3:34 a.m. I'd been in that vision for 47 minutes, but it felt like hours. I was shaking, my heart pounding, and all I could think about was, how many times have I missed him? How many times has he passed by, called to me, invited me, and I've been too distracted, too tired, too comfortable to notice. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I couldn't. I just sat there in my bed, in the dark, replaying everything Jesus had shown me. My mind was racing, trying to process it all, and honestly, part of me wanted to believe I'd just had some weird, stress-induced dream. 4 rapture events in one day? That's not what any prophecy teacher has ever talked about. That's not in any end times chart or timeline I've ever seen. But I knew it wasn't a dream. The presence of Jesus had been too real, too solid, and the grief in his eyes, you can't imagine that kind of sorrow. You can't conjure that up in your own mind. I got up around 5:30 a.m., made some coffee, and I didn't know what to do with myself. I kept looking at the clock. 5:47, 5:53, watching the minutes tick towards 6 a.m. I kept thinking about what Jesus had said, that at 6 a.m. there would be this call, this invitation to come away and meet with him. And I was terrified that I wouldn't feel it, that I'd somehow miss it even though I was watching for it. At 5:58, I knelt down beside my couch. My heart was pounding. I was praying, Jesus, please let me hear you. Let me feel your call. Don't let me be one of the ones who sleeps through this. And then, right at 6 a.m., I felt it. It's so hard to describe. It was like, okay, you know how sometimes you can feel someone looking at you, even before you see them? It was like that, but 1,000 times stronger. It was this deep internal pull, like my spirit was being drawn upward and inward at the same time, and with it came this overwhelming sense of invitation. Not words exactly, but a communication deeper than words. Come, meet with me. I'm here. I started weeping immediately, because it was so beautiful, so pure, so full of love, and also because I realized that I'd felt this before, many times. Those mornings when I'd felt that gentle tug to get up and pray, when something had stirred in my spirit that had been him, that had been Jesus calling. And how many times had I ignored it? But this morning, I answered. I let myself be caught up into his presence, and I don't know how else to describe it except to say that for the next hour, I was in 2 places at once. I was physically in my living room, kneeling on my carpet, but I was also in this place of such intimacy with Jesus that nothing else existed. Time became meaningless. The physical world faded. It was just him and me, and he was pouring his heart into mine. He didn't speak in sentences. It was more like his love was a language all its own, and he was speaking it directly to my spirit. I felt his joy over me. I felt his desire for me to know him, really know him, and I felt his grief, such deep grief over how rare these encounters have become, because his people have stopped answering his calls. When I finally came back to full awareness of my surroundings, it was 7:14 a.m. Over an hour had passed. I felt different, changed, like something fundamental had shifted in my spirit. I felt alive in a way I hadn't felt in years, and I realized, this is what he meant. This is the first rapture event, this catching up of the spirit into his presence. I was still processing all of this when my phone started buzzing. It was around 8 a.m., and I had several texts from other believers, people from my church, from the production crew, friends from around the country. And what struck me was that several of them mentioned having strange experiences that morning. One friend texted, "Woke up at 6 with the strongest urge to pray, but I was so tired. Feel like I missed something. Did you feel anything?" Another message, "Had the weirdest thing happen this morning. Felt like Jesus was calling me to get up and spend time with him, but I had to get the kids ready for school. Now, I can't shake this feeling that I should have stopped everything." I stared at those messages, and my blood ran cold, because it confirmed what Jesus had shown me. It wasn't just my experience. Believers all over, probably all over the world, had felt that call at their 6 a.m., and most of them, even the ones who recognized it as being from Jesus, had chosen something else: sleep, busyness, responsibilities. I wanted to text them back, to explain what Jesus had shown me, but I felt this check in my spirit, like Jesus was saying, "Not yet. Let them see the full picture first." So I went about my morning, but I was watching the clock. Noon was coming, the second rapture event, and I had no idea what to expect. I had a production meeting scheduled for 11:30, and honestly I thought about canceling it. But I felt like Jesus wanted me to go, to experience this the way most believers would in the middle of my normal routine, with distractions and responsibilities pulling at my attention. The meeting was about upcoming scenes, discussing character motivations and script changes. There were 6 of us in the conference room, and I was trying to focus, trying to engage, but part of my mind was on that clock on the wall. 11:47, 11:53, 11:58. At exactly noon, it happened. It was so subtle that if I hadn't been watching for it, I would have completely missed it. In the middle of a sentence, someone was talking about lighting for the next week's shoot. There was this moment, this pause, not an external pause. The person kept talking, but internally, in my spirit, everything went quiet. And in that quietness, I felt him. Jesus was there. Not visible, not audible, but present. So present. It was like he had walked into the room, and every spiritual sense I had was suddenly aware of him. And with his presence came this invitation. Acknowledge me. See me. I'm here. It lasted maybe 3 seconds. That's all. 3 seconds where I had the choice to recognize him or keep my focus on the meeting. I chose him. In my heart I said, Jesus, I see you, you're here. And the moment I did, something shifted. I was still in the meeting, still hearing the conversation, still physically present, but I was also suddenly aware of him in a way that transcended the physical space. It was like a door had opened in my spirit, and I could sense his pleasure, his joy that I had recognized him. And with that came this download of peace, of clarity, of strength that I can't fully explain. But here's what wrecked me. As I looked around the conference room, 2 of the other people there were believers. I knew them, prayed with them sometimes, and I watched their faces during that moment at noon. One of them had a brief flicker, like something had caught his attention for a split second, but then it was gone, and he was back to focusing on the conversation. The other one showed no sign at all that anything had happened. They had missed it, both of them. Jesus had passed by, and they hadn't even noticed. After the meeting, I pulled aside the one who'd had that brief flicker of awareness. Hey, I said, trying to sound casual, did you feel anything weird around noon? Like a presence or something? He looked at me strangely. Weird, you should ask that. I had this split-second thing where I felt like I should pray or something, but then it passed. Why? Jesus was here, I said quietly. At noon. He was in that room with us. His face went pale. What do you mean he was here? I mean he passed by, gave us a chance to acknowledge him, to recognize his presence. I think it was a test, to see if we're spiritually alert enough to sense him even when we're busy with other things. He was quiet for a long moment, and I could see something like regret crossing his features. I felt something, he said finally, but I thought I was just, distracted or something. I didn't realize it was him. He paused. Do you think he'll give us another chance? I thought about what Jesus had shown me about the 6 p.m. event still to come. Yeah, I said, tonight, 6 p.m. He's going to call again, but you have to be watching for it. You have to be spiritually alert. The rest of the afternoon was strange. I felt like I was walking through 2 worlds at once, the physical world where I went through my normal routine, and this spiritual dimension where I was hyper-aware of Jesus' presence. It was like that encounter at noon had opened my eyes to see something that had always been there, but that I'd been too spiritually dull to notice. And I kept thinking about what Jesus had said, that only those who respond to these earlier invitations will be ready for the midnight event, the physical rapture. I'd always thought the rapture was this equal opportunity thing. If you believed in Jesus and were saved, you'd be taken. But what he was showing me was that there's a difference between being saved and being ready. Being saved gets you into the kingdom eventually. But being ready, being a bride who recognizes her bridegroom's voice and responds to his calls, that's what determines whether you're part of the catching away. At 5:30 p.m., I went home. I made some dinner, but I couldn't really eat. I was too aware of what was coming. The 3rd rapture event, 6 p.m. And this one, Jesus had said, was about sacrifice, about choosing him over our own comfort and preferences. I sat on my couch, staring at the TV remote. I had a whole evening planned. There was a show I'd been wanting to watch, and honestly, after the emotional intensity of the day, I just wanted to zone out for a while. I felt like I'd earned some downtime, but I kept hearing Jesus' words. I'll be calling believers away from their evening plans, asking them to sacrifice what they had intended to do. At 5:55, I turned off the TV. I got down on my knees again, and I said, Jesus, whatever you want, whatever you're asking for, I'm choosing you. And at 6 p.m., the invitation came. This time it was different from the morning and the noon encounter. This time I heard his voice, clear as day, though not with my physical ears. Will you give me this evening? Will you sacrifice your plans, your rest, your preferences, and simply sit with me? I want to be honest with you. My flesh didn't want to. I was tired. I'd had an emotionally exhausting day. The idea of spending hours in prayer and worship sounded like work, not rest. Every part of my natural self wanted to say, "Can we do this tomorrow? Can I just have tonight to decompress?" But I remembered the grief in Jesus' eyes when he'd shown me how many believers would say no to this invitation. And I thought about my friend from the meeting who'd missed the noon encounter and the regret on his face. So I said, "Yes, yes, Jesus, I'm yours. Take the whole evening if you want it." And what happened next? I mean, I can't even fully put it into words. Jesus didn't just invite me into his presence, he took me into his heart. For the next 3 hours, I experienced an intimacy with him that I didn't know was possible this side of heaven. He showed me his love for his church, his bride. He showed me his grief over how distant most believers have become from him. He showed me his longing, his actual longing for deep, uninterrupted time with his people, and he showed me something else, something that shook me to my core. He showed me millions of believers across the world in that same moment, all feeling that same invitation. And I watched as the vast majority of them said no, not because they were evil or rebellious, but because they were tired, because they had plans, because they'd already done their devotions that morning, because they felt they deserved their evening to themselves. I saw pastors feel the call and ignore it because they had sermons to prepare. I saw worship leaders feel it and turn on Netflix instead. I saw prayer warriors feel it and choose to scroll through social media. I saw people who could quote Romans and Revelation backward and forward, people who went to multiple Bible studies every week, people who had fish stickers on their cars and crosses around their necks, and they all felt that invitation from Jesus, and they all chose something else, and Jesus was weeping, actually weeping. Not because he was angry with them, but because he knew what was coming at midnight, and he knew that their choice in this moment was determining whether they'd be ready. "Do you see?" he asked me, his voice breaking. "Do you see what I mean about the bride being ready? I'm not looking for people who know about me. I'm looking for people who want me. I'm not looking for people who serve me out of duty. I'm looking for people who love me enough to sacrifice for me. The bride who is ready is the one who, when I call, says yes without hesitation, without negotiation, without reservation." I was sobbing, because I was seeing myself in all those people who'd said no. How many times had I done the exact same thing? How many times had Jesus invited me into deeper intimacy and I'd chosen comfort instead? But Jesus, I managed to say through my tears, most of them don't even realize you're calling. They don't recognize your voice because they haven't been spending time with me. He finished quietly. You can't recognize the voice of someone you barely know. You can't respond to the call of someone you've kept at arm's length. This is why I've been grieving, why my heart has been breaking. My people have turned Christianity into a religion of knowledge and duty, when I created it to be a relationship of love and intimacy. He turned to me then, and his eyes held such intensity. "This is what I need you to tell them. Tonight, right now, before midnight, there's still time. These 3 events aren't just for today. They happen every day. Every morning I call to my people, inviting them into intimacy. Every afternoon I pass by, giving them opportunities to recognize my presence in the midst of their busy lives. Every evening I invite them to sacrifice their own plans and choose time with me instead. And every single day most of them miss me. But the midnight event," I started to say. "The midnight event is coming," he said, and his voice became very grave. "And when it comes, only those who have been responding to my daily invitations will be ready. Only those who have been cultivating intimacy with me, who have learned to recognize my presence, who have made a habit of choosing me over their own comfort, only they will hear the final call and be able to respond." The vision was starting to fade now. I could feel myself being pulled back to my living room, back to full awareness of my physical surroundings. But Jesus had one more thing to show me. He showed me the 4th event, the midnight rapture, and what I saw devastated me, because I saw believers, genuine believers, people who loved Jesus, people who'd been saved for years, standing on the ground watching others disappear, and screaming, "But I believed. I was saved. Why am I still here?" And I heard Jesus' response, and it broke something in me. "You believed in me, but you didn't want me. You were saved, but you weren't ready. You knew about me, but you didn't know me. I called to you every morning, but you chose sleep. I passed by you every afternoon, but you were too distracted to notice. I invited you every evening, but you chose your own comfort. How can you be my bride when you've treated me like a stranger? Then I was back in my living room, gasping, shaking, tears streaming down my face. It was 9:17 p.m. I'd been in that vision for over 3 hours, and all I could think was, how many people are going to miss the midnight rapture simply because they've never learned to respond to Jesus' daily invitations? I sat there on my living room floor for I don't know how long, just trying to process everything. My phone kept buzzing, texts, notifications, the normal noise of life, but I couldn't bring myself to look at it. All I could think about was that image Jesus had shown me. Believers left behind, screaming in confusion, asking why they weren't taken. People who thought they were ready, discovering in the worst possible moment that they weren't. Around 10 p.m., I finally picked up my phone. I had dozens of messages, but one stood out. It was from a friend, a guy I'd known for years, a solid believer, someone who'd been walking with Jesus longer than I had. His text said, "Can't shake this feeling that something's about to happen. Like Jesus is about to move in a big way. You feeling it too?" I stared at that message, and I felt this urgency rising in my chest. I called him immediately. "Hey man," he answered. "What's up?" "Listen to me," I said, and my voice was shaking. "I need you to hear me right now, okay? Jesus showed me something today. Tonight. He's coming at midnight." "Wait, what? Like the rapture?" "Yes. No. I was struggling to find the words. There are 4 rapture events happening in a 24-hour period. We've already passed 3 of them. The midnight one is the physical one, the one everyone's been waiting for, but you're only ready for it if you've been responding to the other 3. There was silence on the other end. Then, I don't understand. What 3 events? I explained everything Jesus had shown me: the 6 a.m. call to intimacy, the noon invitation to recognize his presence, the 6 p.m. call to sacrifice. I told him about watching believers all over the world miss these moments because they chose sleep, or busyness, or comfort. "Did you feel anything at 6 a.m. this morning?" I asked. "Like a pull to get up and pray?" Another silence. Then, very quietly, Yeah, I did, but I was so tired from work yesterday. I thought I'd pray when I woke up for real, but then I got busy with the day and forgot." "What about noon? Did you feel Jesus' presence at all?" Maybe. I don't know. I was in the middle of something. There might have been a moment where I thought about him, and tonight at 6? I pressed. "Did you feel an invitation to spend time with him?" A longer silence this time. When he spoke, his voice was thick. "I did. I was sitting down to watch the game, and I felt this strong urge to turn off the TV and pray instead. But I told myself I'd do it after the game. But then the game went into overtime, and then I was hungry, and, oh God, I missed it. I missed all 3, didn't I?" "It's not too late," I said urgently, glancing at the clock. 10:27 p.m. You still have time. Jesus isn't looking for perfection. He's looking for a heart that responds when he calls. Right now, get on your knees and tell him you're sorry for missing his invitations. Today, tell him you want him more than anything else. Get into his presence and stay there until midnight. "And if I do that?" he asked, and I could hear the fear in his voice. "Will I be ready? Will that be enough?" I thought about what Jesus had shown me, the grief in his eyes, but also the love, the longing. He wasn't looking for people who were perfect. He was looking for people who were hungry for him. "He's not grading on a curve," I said slowly. "This isn't about earning your spot in the rapture. You're already saved. But being ready, being part of the bride, that's about having a heart that responds to him, that recognizes his voice, that chooses him over everything else. If you do that now, genuinely, with your whole heart, I think that's what he's looking for." After I hung up, I started texting and calling everyone I could think of. Other believers, people from church, friends, family. Some of them answered, some of them listened, but a lot of them thought I'd lost my mind. One pastor I reached out to literally laughed. "Brother," he said in that condescending tone that pastors sometimes use, "I appreciate your enthusiasm, but the rapture isn't happening tonight. We still have signs that need to be fulfilled. The Antichrist hasn't been revealed. The temple hasn't been rebuilt. You're getting yourself worked up over nothing." But what if you're wrong? I asked. What if it happens tonight, and you miss it because you were too busy looking for external signs to notice that Jesus has been calling to you internally? That's not biblical, he said flatly. The rapture is a one-time event, not this multiple event thing you're describing. I think you need to study your eschatology more carefully. I hung up, feeling sick to my stomach, because I realized this pastor had all the knowledge. He could probably teach a seminary course on end times theology, but would he recognize Jesus' voice when it came? Would he respond to the call at midnight? At 11 p.m., I felt Jesus' presence again. Not a vision this time, but a deep awareness that he was with me. And I heard his voice in my spirit tell them about the test. What test? I asked aloud. At midnight, when I call, there will be a test. Not of knowledge, not of doctrine, not of how many Bible verses they can quote. A test of recognition. I will speak one word, just one word, and only those who have learned to recognize my voice will hear it. Only those who have been cultivating intimacy with me will know it's me speaking, and that word will be the key. My heart started pounding. What's the word? I can't tell you that, he said gently, because the point isn't to know the word in advance. The point is to know my voice well enough to recognize me speaking it. Those who have been spending time with me, who have been responding to my daily invitations, who have learned what I sound like, they'll know. They'll hear that word, and they'll know without a doubt that it's me, and they'll respond. But those who have kept me at arm's length, who have treated relationship with me like a weekly appointment instead of a daily intimacy, who have chosen comfort over communion, they might hear the word, but they won't recognize my voice. They'll question whether it's really me, they'll hesitate, and in their hesitation the moment will pass. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Jesus, that seems so harsh. So many good people are going to miss this. Is it harsh? He asked quietly, for a bridegroom to expect his bride to recognize his voice. Is it harsh for me to want my people to know me, truly know me, instead of just knowing about me? I've been calling to them every single day of their lives. Every morning, every afternoon, every evening. I've been inviting them into deeper intimacy, giving them opportunities to learn what I sound like, to tune their spirits to my frequency. If they've chosen not to respond, if they've chosen comfort and busyness and distraction over relationship with me that's not harsh, that's just the consequence of their own choices. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was full of both sadness and hope. But tell them this, it's not too late. Not yet. They still have time before midnight. If they will drop everything right now, and I mean everything, and get into my presence with their whole heart, if they will cry out to me for the kind of intimacy that recognizes my voice, if they will repent for all the times they've ignored my invitations and choose me completely, I will meet them. I will teach them what I sound like. I will prepare them. At 11:15 p.m., I went back to my knees. I was praying, worshiping, just pouring out my heart to Jesus, and I felt him drawing near, felt that intimacy that I'd experienced earlier in the evening growing even deeper. It was like he was fine-tuning my spirit, calibrating me to his frequency. And I realized this is what he's been trying to do with all of his people all along. He doesn't just want us to believe the right things about him. He wants us to know him so deeply, so intimately, that we could recognize his voice in a crowded room, that we could pick out his footstep from 1,000 others. At 11:30, my phone rang. It was my friend from earlier, the one I'd talked to around 10:30. I've been in his presence for the last hour, he said, and his voice was trembling. I've been worshiping and praying and just sitting with him, and I heard him. I heard his voice. Not audibly, but I know it was him. He said, I've been waiting for you. He was crying now. All this time, he's just been waiting for me to show up, to really show up, not just go through religious motions. And I've been making him wait. But you're here now, I said. He responded, you chose him. Yeah, he said. Yeah, I did. And I'm going to stay right here until midnight, however long he wants me here, whatever he asks me to do. After we hung up, I checked the time, 11:43 p.m., 17 minutes until midnight, until the fourth and final rapture event. My heart was racing. Part of me was terrified. What if I missed the test? What if I didn't recognize Jesus' voice when he spoke that word? But deeper than the fear was this peace, this confidence that came from having spent the day responding to his invitations. I knew his voice. I'd been with him. I'd chosen him over my own comfort and preferences. I was as ready as I knew how to be. At 11:55, I felt the atmosphere in my apartment shift. It's hard to describe, but it was like the air itself became charged with something heavy, expectant, like all of creation was holding its breath. I knelt there, my hands raised, my heart pounding, and I prayed, Jesus, whatever happens in the next few minutes, I'm yours, completely yours. I love you, I choose you, and I'm listening for your voice. The minutes ticked by. 11:57, 11:58, 11:59, and then, at exactly midnight, I heard it. One word, spoken not in my ears but directly to my spirit. A single word that resonated through every fiber of my being. And the moment I heard it, I knew with absolute certainty that it was Jesus. I recognized his voice immediately, the way you recognize the voice of someone you love deeply. There was no question, no hesitation, no need to analyze or debate. It was him. I can't tell you what the word was. Not because I don't remember it, I'll remember it for the rest of my life, but because that would defeat the whole point. The word itself wasn't the test. Recognizing his voice was the test. The moment I heard that word, I responded. I don't even remember what I said, something like, yes, Lord, or I'm here, or maybe just Jesus. But the instant I responded, everything changed. I was suddenly caught up. That's the only way I can describe it. My body was still in my apartment. I could see it below me, kneeling on the floor, but I was also being lifted, drawn upward, into a place of such light, such glory, such overwhelming love that I thought I might explode from the intensity of it, and I wasn't alone. There were others, hundreds, thousands, maybe millions, being caught up at the same moment. I could see them, sense them, feel their joy and wonder mixing with my own. These were the ones who had responded, the ones who had recognized his voice, the ones who had been preparing not just through right doctrine but through daily intimacy. We were rising together, and ahead of us, brighter than the sun, more real than anything I'd ever experienced, was Jesus. Not playing him on a TV show, not reading about him in scripture, but actually him, face to face. And the love radiating from him was so powerful, so pure, that every other love I'd ever known felt like a pale shadow in comparison. But then I looked down, and what I saw broke my heart all over again. Below, still on the ground, were others, so many others, believers, people I recognized, that pastor who'd laughed at me on the phone, people from my church, friends, family members. They were looking up, confusion and horror on their faces, and I could hear their cries. Wait, what's happening? Why are we still here? Jesus, Jesus, we believe in you. And I heard Jesus' response, and it was full of such sorrow. You believed in me, but you didn't know me. I called to you, but you didn't recognize my voice because you never spent time learning what I sound like. Come, there is still hope for you, still salvation, but the catching away was for my bride, and you chose not to pursue the intimacy that makes someone a bride. The vision faded then, and I found myself back in my apartment, collapsed on the floor, sobbing. I checked my phone with shaking hands. 12:03 a.m. But here's the thing. I was still here, physically here, because what I'd just experienced wasn't the actual rapture. It was a vision of what's coming, a preview, a warning, a final call to get ready before the real event happens. And I realized this is why Jesus showed me all of this, not to tell me it's happening tonight, October 20th, 2025, but to wake people up to the reality that it could happen any night, any day. And when it does happen, the test won't be how much you know about Jesus. It will be whether you know Jesus, whether you've cultivated the kind of intimate relationship where you recognize his voice immediately. I'm recording this message now at 1:47 a.m., and I can't stop shaking, because I know that there are believers watching this video who are in the exact same position as those people I saw left behind in my vision. Believers who are saved, who believe all the right things, who go to church and read their Bibles, but who have never learned to recognize Jesus' voice because they've never made intimacy with him a priority. So here's what I need you to hear. Jesus is calling you right now, not in some future tribulation period, not after more signs are fulfilled. Right now, this moment, he's inviting you into the kind of intimacy that will prepare you for his return. The 4 rapture events I saw: the 6 a.m. call to intimacy, the noon invitation to recognize his presence, the 6 p.m. call to sacrifice, and the midnight test of recognition. These aren't one-time events. They happen every single day. Every morning, Jesus calls to you, inviting you to start your day with him. Every afternoon, he passes by, giving you opportunities to acknowledge his presence in the midst of your busyness. Every evening, he invites you to choose time with him over your own preferences and comfort. And at the end of every day, he's testing whether you're learning to recognize his voice. Most believers are failing these tests, not because they're bad people, not because they don't love Jesus, but because they've allowed Christianity to become a religion of knowledge and duty instead of a relationship of love and intimacy. If you're watching this and you feel that conviction, that Holy Spirit conviction that says, "That's me, I've been missing his calls," don't wait. Don't tell yourself you'll start tomorrow or next week. Jesus might come tonight. He might come while you're watching this video. And the question isn't whether you're saved. The question is whether you're ready. Being ready means you know his voice. Being ready means you've been responding to his daily invitations. Being ready means you've cultivated the kind of intimate relationship where, when he speaks, you recognize him immediately without question or hesitation. So right now, and I mean right now, before you click away from this video, get on your knees. Cry out to Jesus. Repent for all the times you've ignored his invitations. Tell him you want to know him, not just know about him. Ask him to teach you what his voice sounds like. Commit to responding to his call every morning, to recognizing his presence every afternoon, to sacrificing your own comfort every evening to spend time with him. This isn't about works. This isn't about earning your salvation. You can't earn what Jesus already gave freely on the cross. But being part of the bride, being ready for the catching away that requires intimacy, that requires knowing him so deeply that you could recognize his voice in the dark, in the noise, in the chaos. The church has taught us to watch for signs, to look for the Antichrist, to monitor political developments, to track global events. But Jesus said, watch, not watch for signs, just watch. Be alert, stay spiritually awake, keep your eyes on him, learn his voice, cultivate intimacy with him, because when he comes, and he is coming, the only thing that will matter is whether you recognize him calling your name. I'm going to end with this. If you've heard what I've shared today, and you feel that urgency in your spirit, that conviction that you need to get serious about intimacy with Jesus, please don't ignore it. That feeling isn't just emotion. That's the Holy Spirit calling to you right now, inviting you into something deeper. And if you're ready to pursue Jesus with everything you have, if you're committed to learning his voice and responding to his daily invitations, if you want to be part of a community of believers who are truly watching and ready, subscribe to this channel. Leave a comment telling me you're choosing intimacy with Jesus. Tell me what you're praying for, and I will pray with you by name. But most importantly, go to him, right now. Drop everything and get into his presence. Because the midnight hour is closer than you think, and the bride who is ready is the one who has learned to recognize her bridegroom's voice. Jesus is calling. Are you listening?